Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lello.
And it is just us this week. We do not have a guest. We're going to talk about kind of going over mailing lists, and we're going to start with the real basic stuff, but then try to get into a little more advanced stuff. And we're going to answer a listener question and talk about what we've been up to too. We've had some book launches this summer. If we get time, we'll go into Insta Freebie a little bit. It's something we've had guests talk about doing before, but we can talk about our own experiences with it. And I guess why don't we start right out with talking about our news. What have you guys been up to that's related to marketing and publishing books?
I've forgotten what a royal pain in the butt it is to get a pre-order all set and ready to go. But my pre-order for my next fantasy is in place, going live in less than a week. So should be good there. I did not do one with Amazon for reasons that have been spoken before. But I mean, that one is easy enough. I can get that thing submitted online within, what is it, like 2-3 hours easily. But just going through the Smashwords meat grinder process, I've forgotten what a bunch of fun that is. And sorry, Mark, your facility is great. But then working on mysteries, getting close to wrapping that one up. So keep them busy.
Is this the first, you were talking about doing a new fantasy book or start of a new potential launching point into your world? Is this that one?
That is that one, yes.
All right, you'll have to let us know if you get a lot of new people checking out the book one.
Yeah, definitely. Because this is my experiment. Because I've had many of readers going, "Well, you're stopping on the other one." I mean, I thought I really like Tales of Lantari. Keep it going. I'm like, I would, but marketing a first of a new series versus number 7, it's a lot easier to do this. And essentially, it's just Tales of Lantari number 7. I just kind of renamed it, rebranded it a little bit. So I'll let you know how it goes.
All right.
Yeah, for me, I have a couple of things. We've spoken a little bit in the past couple episodes about Struct, which is a book that I have followed none of our advice on this show to launch. At least I should say the making of the book breaks all of the rules that we advise. It's contemporary fantasy, young adult, which are both kind of tricky to get into, and it is very niche. It's got an unusual premise. Specifically, the premise is that there exists a creature that's half pizza oven, half dragon, and that's fun. But that launched
half pizza oven.
Yes.
Is that you serious?
I'm not making that up. It's
awesome.
It's real. It's very well reviewed from the people. I've got 10. Like it's over 4.5 stars for the 10 people that reviewed it. But it's doing okay. It's going to make its money back. It's definitely my least successful launch in a while. But again, what was I expecting? I'm not all the way through my launch strategy on this one. On recommendation of Lindsay, I wrote a short story, which I literally have open in a tab. I'm going to hit go on a giveaway for that pretty soon. And I also haven't used any of the KU promotional tools yet. I was waiting for the first month to go through so that I wouldn't, so that the people who pre-ordered get their money's worth before a cheaper alternative comes along. It seems like it's kind of mean to just show up and immediately discount it after the pre-order. So that's that. I have at the same time, in fact, launched slightly before Struct, is the 4th book in my steampunk series, and that's on pre-order, a long pre-order, which I like to do. And it's doing pretty well. I tweeted earlier, for an unusually large number of my pre-orders are in the UK and Australia. In the UK, as of this morning, I was number 9 in steampunk on the paid list in Amazon, just while still in pre-order. So that's pretty cool.
It's always the greatest in Amazon to be on the paid list versus the free list.
Yeah. I'm on path to make back my money in the pre-order stage, which is nice, because then the launch is just gravy, which is nice. And that's about it, I think, for my news.
All right. Did you do the long pre-order at Amazon just because it's a later book in the series and you weren't too worried about trying to get up there high on release week?
Yeah, we're book 4, and I have not had like a huge amount of I feel like at this point I'm just marketing to people who are already fans of the series, and as we know, the long pre-order on the other places makes a lot of sense ranking wise, and also this is one that has been very, very successful on iBooks. Almost half of my pre-orders are on iBooks right now, and so I felt like I'm gonna probably lean most of my promotional muscle onto iBooks. It's worth saying that I've actually set up an early release on iBooks with this. That's one of the promotional things I'm doing. And in exchange for that, and also having an exclusive excerpt of the book up on iBooks, they are giving me a little bit of carousel promotion when the time comes. So
Nice.
That's cool.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting how with some series or maybe some genres, putting out a new book, whether it's book 7 or 8 or whatever, actually can spur like sales on the first book, especially maybe if you drop the first book to 99 cents at the same time. I just witnessed some of that in the sci-fi romance category where somebody had, here's new book 6 and it's $2.99 or $3.99, and then I saw that her other books in the series actually popped up, and because it was doing well, and I'm like, that doesn't usually happen to me. Maybe it'll happen to me for my pen name in that genre, but yeah, I don't usually experience that for the most part, but I don't ever write in real hot genres, so I don't know if that may play into it a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't
you and
know.
me both. Not putting our finger on the pulse of the industry.
Right. And I guess for my own news, we talked a bit about, I was doing the pen name launch a couple weeks ago when Jeff was slacking off and on a beach somewhere or under a palm
Yeah,
tree,
right.
whatever. And it's done really well, that series. I have 3 books out in it now. I'm going to be wrapping up the story arc in 5 books. And it's ended up being more of a series than I'd planned. It was going to be a trilogy originally, and I wasn't planning to take so much time off of my regular LB stuff. So it's resulted in me not having anything out since I think April under my regular name. But I have done some promos on a couple book ones to try to, keep the backlist selling and not abandon things altogether. But the pen name's been paying the bills this summer. The first book has sold, I actually checked out the numbers ahead of time. It's only 99 cents, but it's in KU, so it gets some nice page reads. It's sold about 7,000 copies in 2 days. It will be 6 weeks, so 5 weeks and 5 days, I guess. And then it's page reads, the equivalent. I did the math, and 7,734 people have read the book. Borrowed the book. So that's like 14,000 total, basically. And I actually, even though it's not super long, I make more from the page reads. So I'm actually like, yeah, borrow it. That's good. And then the second and third books in the series, these are pretty short books. It's almost like a serial. That's kind of how I planned it. So they're just $2.99, but those are selling pretty good too. I didn't get to grab the numbers, but for a while I had all 3 things under 500 overall in the store. And book 1 hung out around 200, between 200 and 250 for the first 30 days or so, and it's dropping off some now. But for me, that's great. I don't usually, I've had one other series do that well. That was my Fallen Empire series last year. And if you can stay up there with a few books for a while, it's definitely profitable. I highly recommend it. And as I talked about with Joe, this is the first series with my pen name that's done that well. And it's the first series where I've had the characters start out on Earth. We've talked about with science fiction, sometimes the stuff that has Earth characters from modern times, it's just a little easier to sell. I think it has a little broader appeal to people who are kind of sci-fi fans, but maybe aren't into Star Wars and Firefly and stuff in a made-up world. And it seemed to really help with that. Of course, there's a big man chest on the front too, so maybe that's the secret. But I didn't have that in my last series. But I guess it was a pretty good example of, it's not written to market necessarily. As I've talked about, I'm horrible at that, but it's kind of touching a little closer to some of the popular tropes, and I think that did help at least get people to check it out. In other news, the same book, first book, was illegally published on Apple, thanks to some scammer. And this is like the second time this has happened with my pen name. When your book's just in KDP Select, it's like there's an opening over here on these other platforms for some schmarmy person to upload it. And how did I find out? I got a nice little email from Amazon saying like, hey, we're going to kick this out of KDP Select because it's not exclusive. I'm like, what? It's totally exclusive. What are you talking about? And of course I was freaking out because this book had like 2 million page reads at some point. So if they decide not to pay me, that's thousands of dollars, right? So I just want to say a big thank you to Dan Wood at Draft to Digital. He saw me blow my top on Twitter, which I don't recommend doing. I'm not usually like saying go Twitter shaming people and things like that, but he happened to see the tweet and he sent a note to Apple because something similar, I guess, was going on with Draft to Digital. They'd had kind of a similar thing, and it got yanked down really quickly. So I really appreciate that. I don't even have a Draft to Digital account, so that was really cool of Dan to do that. But definitely if you're in KDP Select and you're depending on that page read income, you might want to actually check your own books every now and then just to make sure they don't appear anywhere else. I've had it in the French store before, and it's not good when Amazon's the one to email you. They're somewhat understanding. If you tell them you didn't do it, they'll give you a little more time than the 5 days, but it can be scary when you don't have a contact or anything and you don't know, and you just kind of shuffled off to some random, here's the, random help from Apple or something.
And they aren't exactly the most understandable when you tell them you didn't do it, just FYI.
Well, I feel like we should touch on the big news that was out this week. There's been a couple, because there are Epic Fantasy people that were doing this, that were using some site that was basically using a click farm in the background, and these books shot up. One shot up to #1 overall in the entire Amazon store. And y'all know Epic Fantasy does not do that.
No, it
Love
does not.
Epic Fantasy, but you're not going to see much of it in the top 100 ever. I don't even think George R.R. Martin gets to hang out in, maybe if he actually had a new release, it might get up there, but that's not that popular of a genre. And then somebody else has been in there several times using this service, we believe. And this is David Gaughran that was wrote a big post about it. So just be very careful. I mean, it sounds like these guys didn't get their accounts yanked away, which is a little surprising to me, honestly. But be very careful if you're buying promos from a site where, like, go on Kboards or someplace and say, hey, has anybody heard of this site? What's the deal? Because the story I heard is that the authors didn't know it was click farm stuff, but some of these sites are promising, oh, you'll get 250 borrows and blah, blah, blah. And you can even find stuff on Fiverr right now. But if you get caught, it's going to be your butt, and you could lose all that income. You could lose your account.
And they will ban you from ever showing your face on Amazon again.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if they're guaranteeing a certain number of borrows, the only way they can guarantee a certain number of borrows is if they make those borrows happen. It's a pretty big tell in terms of scammery.
Yeah, there was a big article just recently on Chinese click farms or something for some of this, and it had a picture of this gal with like 20 Kindles lined up, and she's just like touch, 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 touch. It's like, okay, yep. And it's really frustrating for those that are in it because the rates keep going down, and it's hard not to feel like, oh, these scammers are kind of causing the rates for everyone else to go down. And I don't know if that's true. Amazon can choose every month how much they put in the pot, but just be careful with what kind of promos you sign up for. Yeah,
because my big thing was that means you're letting someone else theoretically take your account now if you're not careful and you do your diligence there and check around, make sure no one's screwing around with your book.
Yeah, like in Jeff's case too, if you happen to, maybe you don't usually get, maybe you only get a couple of thousand reads a day, and all of a sudden you get 200,000 reads a day, you might want to preemptively email Amazon and let them know if you don't have any idea how that happened, because it sound like sometimes they target legitimate people who are not paying for their services to make it hard, easier to cover their tracks.
Yeah, distractions is what they're calling. Because yeah, that's pretty much what happened to me. And Amazon did not care. Like, okay, well, clearly you're using systematic accounts. Bye bye. It's like, man, no, like slap your hand or anything. It just kicked you out. So yeah, I had to take some drastic steps, but I got it back.
All right, let's jump into our reader question before we go into the mailing list stuff. This is from E. Marks. He says, could your podcast address how to find an editor for a niche genre? I'm in the process of writing my first science fiction paranormal romance, obviously a niche crossover category, and I'm a little concerned about finding an appropriate editor for this series, for a series of this nature. He's worried that using paranormal romance editor, or if he uses a paranormal romance editor, they might have difficulty with the science fiction, and I know a straight science fiction editor will find the paranormal and romance aspects unfamiliar. Help. You guys go ahead. I responded to him in email, but I'll wait and let you guys chime in.
I would think that if by chance, let's say he contacts a paranormal or romance editor where he says that they might have difficulty with the science fiction, well, I would imagine if the editor has any sort of problem, then he should just contact the author and say, hey, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? But I mean, my two genres that I use, fantasy and mystery, I haven't found a way to correctly do a crossover yet there, but I'm still investigating. But that would be the only thing I can think of is just trust that a good professional editor will inquire and ask questions if they're confused about anything.
Let me say real quick, it's E. I don't know if it's a he or she, so somehow
E.
I never know. So E, this is E's question.
Sorry, E.
In my experience, the two things that might trip up an editor are if it's erotica. Lots of people specifically don't want to do that, and if it's nonfiction versus fiction. Other than that, in my experience, editors are usually pretty good at being able to edit structurally any other genre. But in terms of finding someone who you think, it may be a niche, but you're certainly not the only person ever to write in a given genre. And all you really need to do is talk to someone who has a successful book in that genre and ask who their editor is. And if they can't give you an editor, they can at least give you recommendations. The way I ended up with both of my editors, and I have two, is the first one was, remember there was a website, Editors and Predators. This was it was sort of a like early web, I want to say, just in terms of design, but it was a list of editors and whether or not they were worthwhile, and that's where I found my first editor. And my second editor was someone I had collaborated with, or actually shown up on the same contest with, and it turned out that she had an affinity for the kind of sci-fi that I write, and I started working with her. So you can find an editor just by finding other people who have used editors, or you can just find a good editor, and you can be reasonably certain, as long as it's not nonfiction or erotica, they're probably going to be able to handle it without too much trouble.
Most editors usually state right on their websites when you're looking them up, they'll say, I'm willing to do this, and usually will say not willing to do, and usually they'll list what they don't want to do.
Yeah, I agree that you could just look at some books in your genre, and if you go look right now, there's a whole bunch of dragon shifters in the sci-fi romance category. So I don't know what your mashup is exactly, but there definitely is some stuff out there. Or you could ask for on Kboards. People are always happy to recommend their editor. My thoughts were, if you're just getting a copy edit, it's not going to matter what the genre is. They're looking at sentence formation for the most part. If you are looking for more of a developmental editor, as I told E, I was kind of asking, is it more romance or is it more a story that has romantic elements, which those of us who listen to Veronica's podcast know the difference. And if it's romance, it's really very specific formula, and there are actually things people readers expect. Like if you look at the Harlequin things, it's like 30% they should be kissing already, 60, 70% sex, this conflict here, happily ever after or happily for now ending. And so getting somebody that's really familiar with that genre might not be a bad idea for that. I actually feel that science fiction is a little more open and out there and fewer rules, and it's probably less important. I will say with my own editor, I have had to, editors have no trouble. They're actually very literally minded. Usually they have no trouble. They're not going to have any trouble with the science aspect if you actually have hard science in there. Where my editor and she's questioned a few things before. She's not familiar with the fandom. So especially when I had my Earth-based stuff, I would reference Star Trek, and I've used some things like force fields as one word. I'm like, no, in sci-fi, I think this is one word and not two words. And something, I'm like, oh, sci-fi fans will know what that is. And she's like, okay. So you may run into a little of that stuff, but so for developmental editing, I would lean towards getting a romance specialist if it is really a solid romance story. If it's a sci-fi adventure with some romantic hand-holding and kissing, maybe you could find a sci-fi editor. There are actually, when it comes to developmental editing, it tends to be pretty expensive, but you can find people out there that specialize in sci-fi or something like that. And sometimes they will actually have worked at one of the big 5 houses or something like that. And it does get pricey. I would say maybe a workshop is a better way to start with going with other writers in your genre if you have the time, and if you have the money to drop 3,000 or whatever on a developmental edit, by all means, give it a try. It gets harder to make your money back, obviously, if you're spending that much in editing. So something to think about.
I have a viewer question for you.
Sure.
Courtney popped up and said, is there a site that acts as a marketplace for freelance editing or a professional group or industry association for them? And my answer to that is not that I'm aware of, but I want to see what you two think.
I know on Kboards they have a yellow pages kind of thing where there's a big list of people offering their services, but anybody can hang their shingle on there, I believe. They're not necessarily vetted. So I'm not aware of anything like a guild or anything where you can just kind of go through and they have like stars next to their name, 4.7 star satisfaction for this editor. So I'm not aware of that.
I know when I was at Book Expo, there are things that are sort of like this. I can't conjure to mind the name of one right now. I'll try to look it up after the podcast. But there are sort of like little, I want to say, authors guilds that will have recommendation lists, but it's not really like a marketplace where you can go and shop and compare. It's more a group you join, and as a benefit for joining the group, you get their curated list of recommended editors. So not as useful perhaps as you were hoping. I'll take a look anyway. It's one of those acronym type things like IBFW or something like that.
One more suggestion is if you do kind of look through the top 100 to find like who edited which book, you read the book first and see if you think it was well edited. I've actually seen quite a few people recommend their editor, and I go look at their book and I'm like, ooh, I think you need to find a better editor. So maybe find someone of an author you actually enjoy that's kind of in your niche there.
Yeah, everyone's done that, where we read some of the books like, oh yeah, this is professionally edited, and wow, I hope they didn't pay too much for this, because this looked like a whole bunch of copy and pasting and it just didn't flow well. But yeah.
It's not necessarily the editor's fault, I should say.
True.
If the reader
that is true.
rejected things and or said, I only want to pay for whatever, a proofread, but I'd try to find somebody that their books are pretty clean.
Makes you wonder if an editor ever looks at a work and goes, oh, hell no, and rejects it and goes on to the next one.
Oh, I'm sure the sample edits are there for both sides. All right, let's get into our main topic, mailing list. We're kind of going to go from some basic stuff to more advanced. And, we're not pros on this. Maybe someday we can get somebody on that's just really spends their time making courses to sell to authors and knows everything on the subject. But we've been doing it for a while, so hopefully we'll have some useful information for you guys. So I've just kind of gone through a lot of the common questions, and we can answer them and go down the list. Number one, where do you guys host your mailing list?
Right now it's right on WordPress, but I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to switch to more likely a paid service of some sort. And I've heard a lot of good things about MailChimp, so I'll probably be switching to them.
I am on MailChimp.
There you go.
There you go. And I would say good things about them.
All right, but let me ask you, because I was looking at MailChimp just ahead of this to talk about it, because it's one of the ones I hear a lot. And their price is, it's free for the first 2,000, but then it's every 500 subscribers, the price goes up. And I thought that was a really
it's a steep
low
increase.
Threshold. Like really quickly, it got really expensive.
Yeah. It literally, I had a situation where I was hovering below 2,000 for a while. And then I did a marketing push, and I ended up getting about 1,500 new signups, and a lot of them hemorrhaged afterward. But I like over the course of 2 weeks launched up through 2 pricing thresholds. But it's like real-time pricing adjustment. They warn you, or it's like, you're going to go up to the next level, and if you drop back down, you drop back down to the next level. So it sort of adapts to the size of your list. But yeah, it does ramp up quickly once you get past 2,000.
All right, and I've heard good things about MailerLite too, and there's some other stuff out there. You do want to get something that's got a long they've been in business for a while, and they're probably not going to go anywhere soon. I've seen some newer things coming out that are just for kind of geared towards authors, and maybe it'll be okay, but it's such a pain in the butt to move your list to a new service that maybe just going with something that's got a good reputation and has been around for a while. I have my list at Aweber, and I'm looking at their prices now, and it goes up quickly too, but it's not every 500. Like right now it's 19 a month for up to 500 subscribers, 50 a month for like 2,500 to 5,000. Then you get to 10,000 to 25,000. It's 150 a month. And I tell you, I had to look up their prices because I've talked about this before. I've been there for 10 years because I used to do some internet marketing stuff. So I'm on like this old grandfathered plan, and I pay about $80 a quarter. And I've got over 10,000. I think I'm at 18,000 between my 3 lists. And it's only recently, once I got to 10, they started charging me $10 a month in addition to the $53 a quarter. But, you know, yay me, obviously it pays. Sometimes it pays to be a subscriber for a long time somewhere. I don't have all the cool new features. There's newer features if you sign up now and get the most current account. But so that's why I haven't entertained switching to anything else. And
you'll get dinged, is what you're saying.
Well, and fortunately, I make enough now that it's not really a big deal. What I really feel for people that are doing giveaways and things like that to build these huge lists. I mean, I've heard on podcasts where people are like, "Oh, I've got 50,000 subscribers," and you go look at their books, and I'm like, I don't think you're making $100 a month in book sales combined. So that's something to be careful about because the fees are going to add up. If you're making $10,000 a month from your books, $200 a month from a mailing list is no big deal. And like with me, all I have to do is put an affiliate link in there, and it pays for the monthly or the quarterly fee right off the bat because of. And actually, apparently, you're not supposed to do this anymore. So do it at your own risk. I don't make so much from the Amazon affiliate program that I'm gonna cry if they kick me out over that. I find it. You're supposed to just do it on your website. So I guess what you should do is put a link from your mailing list to your website, and then they click on the website link and go buy your book on Amazon. So if you want to be all legit, that's the way to do it. But if you do it that way, if you have a big enough list that they're actually buyers, in addition to buying your own books, you know, use your affiliate links on your books. You can recommend other stuff that you've really enjoyed, like in your genre, or you can do some of the cross-promo stuff with other authors if that suits you and you like their books and don't mind recommending them and your readers are okay with recommending them. And that's between you and your subscribers, right? Some authors only do a new release announcement and they promise that's all they're going to send out. So if you make that promise, that better be all you send out. But I found that in general, readers are really excited to get your recommendations. So I don't mind if I actually read a book, I will totally put a link in there and say, hey, go buy it. It was awesome. So that's for you. You can make more money that way, though, if you do have a big list and you're trying to cover those fees. Next question somebody asked, is a mailing list necessary if you're already active on social media and you're getting people following you there?
I don't know if the social media is there to try and build up your fan base. What better way to, like, when you're popular, ask for an email address and say, hey, sign up for the newsletter or get notices when a book goes live or you do a contest or a giveaway or something. So I would say by all means, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if for no other reason than the mailing list is yours, email is probably not going anywhere. Email is probably going to be around for a while. Social media, ebbs and wanes. There was a thing called MySpace. There was a thing called Vine. These things were big for a while and stopped. And if you, put all your eggs in those baskets, you could have your 2 million people who really love your MySpace page, but they're not looking at it anymore. But if you got all 2 million of those people onto a newsletter, then you're made in the shade because you send out one thing a month and you're going to make enough, you still have them even after the other thing is gone. So I definitely think that your mailing list should be your primary, pool of potential buyers.
That was the example I was going to use too. It's like, I bet you were big on MySpace. It is true. Same thing. You own your mailing list as long as you keep paying your monthly fees, and you own your website where you probably have your mailing list sign up. There's nothing wrong with being on the other spots too. I've definitely got people who will not sign up for a mailing list, and I'm one of those readers too. I love some authors, and I'm not signing up for their list because I don't want any more junk in my email. But you might follow them on Facebook or Twitter. Or, I don't know. Is anybody doing Google Plus? That one didn't really take off.
I have a Google Plus account, but I have yet to figure out how to make it work in benefit of an author. So
yeah, I have one. It's been a couple years since I posted anything. So, all right. Next question: what should you email to your subscribers?
that's an easy one. Like new title release, giveaways. If there's some sort of promotion that's going on, for example, even though it's just about over, but Smashwords has its month-long, what is it, like read an ebook or summer savings, that sort of thing. So if you happen to have books in Smashwords and you choose to agree to it, they give you like a little coupon code, takes them down however much you choose, so you can email that to everybody. And of course, then you can see when the coupon's used, so you can see if it's actually worth it. And it's worked for me. I've noticed a bunch of sales that have accumulated, which I don't typically get that many sales directly through Smashwords, but I have on this one just because I let them know that, hey, they're on sale.
Yeah, in my I generally don't just send an email just to send an email. Like I don't send an email on a schedule, but so I'll send an email if I've got a promo or if I've got a new release or if there's a sale. So yeah, those are the main reasons that I have them. And often I wait until I have at least two things, or rather, often I plan to have at least two things to talk about.
Right. I generally do new releases, and if I'm involved with like we're launching an anthology, or I don't do too many group promos. I'm more open to that on my Ruby Lions Drake mailing list because she doesn't have a huge list. As I've mentioned on here before, I really have to think about if I want to send out an email because I'm going to get a lot of email back at this point, and that's just going to happen when you get up to like 10,000 subscribers. And it can be great to hear from people, but all of a sudden here you have hours of work to answer these emails. So I now pick and choose a little bit when I email, and I've also, I think what people ask this question is because they've got like one book or they're writing a book a year, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's most people, especially in the beginning. And they're, the advice is you gotta like not just email once a year when you have a new release. You have to make sure these people remember you in between. Because otherwise they might, if it's a long time in between, they're probably going to unsubscribe and kind of forget who you are. So some of the things you can send out then is if you're working on a new project, send snippets. Here's some, hey guys, just an update. Here's the scene, part of the scene that I wrote today. I'm really excited about. It has some fun dialogue in it. And I find that with my people, they really want to hear little what's going on in my life, what I'm working on. Am I ever going to get back to the Rust and Relic series? Nobody buys those books, but everybody wants the next one in the series. I don't know. I don't get it. The people who do buy it want the whole series. But so, and one thing you can do too is, like I said, I do think readers like your recommendations. If they've read one of your books and they like your humor or they like your style, you're probably going to be a fan of other authors with similar styles and similar, ways of writing the book. So don't be afraid to recommend a book that you liked. Be a little wary of doing like, here's 10 books. I'm in cross promos with these other authors and they want me to pimp their books that I've never read or even looked at the sample. So be careful of that kind of thing. But legitimately recommending a book, I think people enjoy that. I feel as a lot of us are introverts as authors, so we're afraid to email people because we don't want to be bothered and we assume nobody else wants to be bothered. If they don't want to be bothered, they probably wouldn't have subscribed or they'll unsubscribe. And it's probably not a bother. I mean, they're a fan of yours if they've read some of your books, and they probably, believe it or not, probably are interested in your life.
One thing I was thinking too that some people might be able to do for those that only release one book a year is like, hey, most people are following you because they're interested in what you're doing. And one thing I did when I first started out is just because I wanted something to be able to write about. I was like, okay, I'm like, say halfway through this particular book here, and I could use a couple of names here. Anybody have any suggestions? And then I usually gets a pretty good response based on that too. So just you don't want to make a nuisance of yourself, but then again, you don't want them to forget about you either.
Yep, and if you are only releasing one book a year, every year or two, people probably want to know the updates. Like, I want to know with my authors that are trad published and only do one every couple of years, what's the next one going to be and when's it coming? So don't be afraid to share that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like the longer the lag between releases, the more important it is to sort of have like a keep alive, like a heartbeat on you as an author, because yeah, they'll definitely want to know if you're still a going concern.
Especially if they're waiting for the next one in a series and you had a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
All right, we kind of covered this. How often should you email your subscribers? A lot of people do once a month. I think that's probably good, about maybe once every 2 months, maybe, if you're not publishing super often. I at least would do once a quarter. I think you get into the realm of we're going to forget who you are if you wait much more than that between emails.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. No later than once a quarter. But for me, as whenever I've got something important to tell them, which is usually a news or a release for a book or a contest, or hey, I didn't want to start up a Goodreads giveaway for this, but like Joe was saying, I just won't say just about that. I'll wait till I have a few things and then put them all in the same newsletter and send it out.
Yeah, I prefer to put out at least once a month, but no more than twice a month is usually my formula for this. Unless I have like a major sequence of releases. In the past, I've had a situation where I released multiple books in a 2-week period, so I might hit once a week for a month. But generally speaking, yeah, at least once a month, no more than twice a month for the Joe method.
All right, and the next question, and you'll hear this recommended from internet marketers and authors who are doing real well, is maybe you should consider emailing twice, like 1 week followed by the next week. When you launch a new book, don't assume that everybody saw that email. They might have got junked, they might have been busy, they might have just deleted it on accident. So it's really not a bad idea to do a follow-up email the next week. And I usually only do this on a book one when I'm really trying to get a new series off to a good launch. I want to make sure I hit as many people as possible. And on that second email, either you can, most mailing services have a feature where you can see who didn't open the previous email, and you can choose only to email the people who didn't open it. I will usually just email everyone again, but kind of have a little different news. And it just, however it works, I like, hey, we got 100 reviews. This is awesome. Thank you so much, everyone who reviewed this. And if you didn't buy it yet, oh, here's the first 3 chapters on my site. And maybe in the first email, I just had the blurb and the cover. And now this one, here's the chapters. So it's something to consider. I know, like Joe, we don't want to bother people. That's our tendency. But, it can make a huge difference if you've got a big list like that. A lot of people might just not have even noticed that first email. It happens.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's especially like in my case. I mean, when you're getting ready to launch a new series, couldn't help to do a friendly reminder, but I would space it out a little bit. Maybe like you're saying, one week, maybe 2 weeks. Like right now, I know I'd sent something out about a week and a half or so ago, and I'll probably give it about 4 or 5 days before the thing goes live, just as a hey, friendly reminder if you haven't ordered your copy yet, or get ready to order this thing because it's going live on so and so.
Yeah, the way I structure my emails is typically I'll do, I guess, what MailChimp calls a 2-story email. Actually, usually it's 3 these days, where I'll have 3 separate things I'm talking about. And the way I normally will do it is on like the launch day. Story 1 will be, hey, I got a book launch. And then story 2 will be, here's what I'm working on next. And story 3 will be whatever. And then a week or 2 later, I'll do another one because they'll usually have a new update. Like, okay, I've officially started working on this. If you haven't known about that, blah, 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 here's what's coming up. But then story 2 will be, in case you missed it, here's the, this, that, the other. So that people who, there will be something new, like you say, some additional news. And people who already know about it, they can just scroll past it and see whatever the third story is. But yeah, that's how I do it.
All right. And the big question is, how do you get people to sign up for your list in the first place? And this is kind of a chicken and an egg thing where it's a lot easier to do once you have books out and you can run some promos and maybe make book one free for a while. And you've got, and we've often talked about on here how you may want to, whatever series you're working on or book, maybe you want to do a short story that ties in, or, a bonus scene from a different point of view character, that something that would, not just a random short story that doesn't really tie in or doesn't, nobody's going to care about, but something that somebody who read book 1 is going to be dying to, like, what was the assassin character thinking when they first met? So that kind of thing can really be appealing to people that are reading the series. So giving away something free, and I've talked about this before where I never did that on my original Lindsay Broker list. So you can just find on my website somewhere that I've had since like 2011. And, I just say on there, yeah, sign up if you want. I'll email you when I have updates. And people sign up, which is cool. But when I did my Fallen Empire series last year, I made a fresh sci-fi list and I gave them the prequel novella. And I put the link at the back of book 1. So they had to read book 1 first to get the link and join the list. So I was pretty sure I was going to get subscribers only that cared about the story and were already invested in it. But by giving something away, that list quickly grew by thousands. And today it's about just shy of 10,000, whereas I think I have less than 7,000 on the list that I never gave anything away for them. So it works. But, you know, how do you get all those, right? You need, if the books are selling, it's no problem. And that was how I built it. The first book sold really well for quite a while last summer on Amazon, and a lot of people came onto the list during that time. And now I've gone wide with it, and it's free everywhere for a while, and I'm trying to get a BookBub, but nothing has happened yet in that department. But if you have your book out there and you sell a lot, you can get it on it. But what do you do when you don't have a book out yet? How do you start building a list? Because it's not a bad idea, because otherwise your first launch is tough. Do you guys have any advice on that?
Well, I was one of the fools who didn't start the mailing list until well after the couple of books had already been published, and I started going, yeah, maybe it might be a wise idea to actually get this mailing list going. So yeah, I mean, I listened to a lot of the advice, and I was getting some people signing up, but not too much, not too fast. And then you put that free short story in there that you say specifically can only available to subscribers of this particular newsletter there, and I just saw it blow up from there. So giving them something free, and especially something exclusive, typically what works best for me.
Yeah, I likewise started my mailing list way after I started writing, so I had a fair number of people who were already interested in my stuff, and I built it mostly by having a free book that linked to the mailing list and also giving out newsletter perks. That's actually another thing I do to sort of give me another thing to email about. I refresh my newsletter perk several times a year, so whenever I have a new one, everyone already on the list gets an email saying, hey, I have a new perk, and it sort of keeps people on the list. And everyone else, it gets switched over to being the thing they get when they sign up. But if I didn't have books already, if I didn't have books already, and I was trying to build a mailing list before the first release, I think that's a situation where you have your website or whatever your landing page is going to be, and you have your sign up on your website, and you sort of funnel people through every other means. If you have social media, and you're very, if this is a situation for your MySpace fame, if you can funnel them back to your website, and get them to sign up through your website link, or just even have your website link prominently. And again, if you can afford the time and effort to write your short story that is free, and have that ready even before your first book release, that's not a bad idea either.
Yeah, this is the case where something like InstaFreebie can be really helpful if you are able to write something that ties into book one. Or we've had people on too that have done like the first 6 chapters of their first book kind of as a prequel novella, and maybe put that on a site like InstaFreebie. You still have to drive the traffic there. It's not super helpful in that regard. I'd almost say maybe you might get more out of it by just throwing that free short story up on Amazon and Smashwords and Barnes & Noble and putting a link to your mailing list in the back. But we're just going to fully acknowledge here, it's tough if you don't have anything out there yet that people have tried and they know that they like your writing. It's tough. So in my case, honestly, I just would wait. I'd be kind of maybe save up a little money so I could buy a few ads around that first book release. And just try to get people, and like I've talked about before, I prefer to get people at the end of book one, people who have actually read it on my list. A lot of times, like with the InstaFreebie, they give you their email when they download the book. So maybe they liked it, maybe they didn't. People sign up at the end of the book, they obviously liked it. Otherwise, they didn't sign up. And that's a way to keep mailing list costs down. As we were talking about, things get up there really quickly when you're starting adding 1,000 people here, 1,000 people there. So, and that's, like I said, that's fine later on when you're making a lot of money as an author. But if you're early on still, and here you have to cover this 30,000 people mailing list, that can be a little bit extra each month. You could also try something like Wattpad. I tried that with my pen name, but it's tough with the R-rated romancy stuff because it's a special search people have to do. They have to tick that they want the adult stuff. But if you're doing maybe like YA fantasy or YA sci-fi, that site might work if you just start putting some of your stuff up there before you publish the book. And even if you don't get a huge mailing list out of that, you might be able to get some early reviewers that way, people that are willing to post reviews in exchange for like an early copy of the book when you have it ready. All right, but definitely something free that ties into your series. We recommend that. So what kind of open rates should you expect? I see this question a lot, and I will say that whatever you're looking at with open rates, sometimes everything doesn't get counted. You know, I've heard of people taking people off their list because it looked like they never opened and they weren't inactive. And then they get emails from that person like, why'd you take me off? I love your books. I buy them all the time. I click the links. And it's like, oops. So it may not be 100% accurate, but do you guys know roughly what yours are? Like, as an example of what maybe people could expect?
When I first started mine, I think I was getting a rate of probably about a quarter, about 25%. And then I started experimenting with the subject lines of the emails. I'm like, what if? Okay, well, I've got a free book going. I'm going, hey, so let's just change that to this. Okay, obviously my newsletter, free book giveaway. Wow, you watch that number jump, because a lot of people actually look at that little subject line and go, he's giving away something. Let's just go see what it is. And you click the thing to open and it tallies it up. So I've learned to do some experimenting, and most of the times, a lot of it's just like you have to look at it when you're looking at your inbox. You only see the subject line, you see who it's from, and the subject line. That's it. So make it eye catching, just like a book blurb, sort of.
Yeah. When I first started, when I was only getting my, when the only people on my subscription list were people who had gotten to the end of my free book, or had gone via my website, my open rate was around 60%. And once I started aggressively promoting it through other means, it dropped to around 45%. But there's two things on MailChimp. They'll tell you the industry average for your thing. I don't think author was an option when I first started setting what my industry was, so I'm under artist. And apparently artists tend to have around a 15 to 25% open rate. And there's also a click rate thing, which tends to be much lower, by the way. And also, when I was at Book Expo, they were talking about how the authors tend to have around a 60%, like a successful author will tend to have around a 60% open rate. So I guess 60% is okay.
Yeah, this seems like a pretty good goal to shoot for. As Joe and I were talking about before, sometimes as your list gets bigger and bigger, and it may get older too, with some of the people having been on there for 5 years or something, the rates will go down. I checked on my stuff, and my Ruby list, it's a mix. There were like 700 people on there from the last series, which was like 2 years ago, that they never unsubscribed. And then I've added about 1,000 since I launched this new series this summer, and they have a great open rate. They're around 70% right now. And I think it's just because it's a smaller list. I think there's about 1,700, 1,800 people on it now. And newer too. Like I said, I think your stuff may go down over time a little bit as people, Lindsay's got 50 books and she just published 51. As it's a little less new and fun. I don't know. And maybe that's not true for everybody. But I noticed with my base one, it's only around 50%, the one that's on my site that, I've not been emailing really regularly lately. And with my sci-fi list that I started last year, it's around 60%. So that's not too bad. I guess I'm the industry average. Congratulations. And I will say I am not great at headers, coming up with that thing. My only thought when I put together the header is, okay, don't do something that's going to get me marked as spam, or complaints, because you can see as they get bigger, you almost always get somebody that complains about it, however that works. And oh gosh, this last emailing I sent out, I had a story called Combat Support in the Orphans in the Black anthology, and something about those keywords, orphans, combat, whatever. Everybody on Gmail from my list got a warning that it was like possibly a scammy phishing kind of email, because it had content that was typical for that. And I was just like, what? Some people told me, we told them it wasn't. And so hopefully future emails won't be tagged like that. But I was just like, man, I'm going to get a bunch of unsubscribes over that and complaints. And actually, I don't know if I should look and see if I did. I've got 3 lists going right now, so it's a little confusing to just jump in there for a glance. But be careful about your wording too. If you're doing military sci-fi or something, you could be in the same boat easily. So just something to keep in mind as an aside there. All right, Tara Eden asked me on Twitter today, what do you guys do about scrubbing your email list, meaning like going through and taking people off, maybe if they're not inactive? Do you guys do this, or should you do it? And for me, I don't do it, and it's because most of my subscribers, like I said, have to have read one of my books before they sign up, so they're they're readers. They're not just people I got like, you know, from a giveaway who hadn't read the books first. A lot of people are getting huge numbers of people from doing cross promo things with other authors, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that is where you get in the situation where you can get this huge number of people, and some may be buyers, but some may not. They're, you know. So what do you guys do? Do you ever remove people from your lists?
I haven't as of yet, but I have a feeling if the only reason I can see myself doing this is if by chance I get on MailChimp and I see myself hit one of those thresholds, I'm like, let's just take a quick look through here and see if there's anyone that hasn't done anything in for like the longest time, and maybe then I might consider it. But right now, no, I'm not worried about it. I've never done it, and I say until that point happens, I don't see myself doing it either.
Yeah, likewise. If I'm close to a threshold that I feel like is above what the potential value of sending in a mailing list at that size is, I might go through. I haven't ever done so yet. But one of the things that MailChimp does is it will automatically unsubscribe people who have a hard bounce, which is basically like the email address doesn't actually exist, or a soft bounce enough times, which is like the inbox is full. So the worst of the worst are automatically scrubbed from my list. Maybe I'll go through, but I don't think so, because as Lindsay's pointed out, a lot of times it says that people don't have any activity, but it's just because they happen to be interacting through some means which is not tracked. There might even be a situation where like do not track is an option in a browser, and it's entirely possible that this is the sort of thing that it'll filter those people out.
Right. I feel like every time this scrubbing email stuff comes up on Kboard, somebody's like, I removed a bunch of people and they emailed me back and said, why did you remove me? So it's just something to be careful of. I did recently, kind of just to experiment, start an Insta freebie account with using my freebie from my Ruby newsletter. So I'm going to make a separate email list for those people that I get. It's only been a couple of days. I've got like 180 emails and 300 downloads or whatever. So, but those are the kind of people that I would probably consider scrubbing, and that's why I'm putting them on a separate list, because they're not going to be, they're the people that gave the email and then they read the story. So they'd be more likely to unsubscribe, less likely to be buyers, and not everybody's got the grandfathered plan from 10 years ago. So if you're paying the normal rates right now and you're in the tens of thousands of subscribers, it's something to consider. I would definitely, like I said, have one list that these are your people that subscribe from the back of the book, and then have another list or a way to segregate it. Some of the services are really good about offering ways to categorize and segregate your list. Have another section. So it's just really easy to see which people maybe you want to weed out that are dead weight that you're paying for. All right, that's the next list. Oh, should you segregate your mailing list at all? Kind of, because some places will let you go by demographics or who opens and clicks more often. Is there, and the reason you might want to do that is to email those people separately. And this may be a case where if you're someone like me who writes sci-fi and fantasy, and in my case, I just made a different list, but if you didn't, you could do a survey and say, these are the fantasy people, these are the sci-fi people, so you can only send an email out to the sci-fi people, self-identified lovers of sci-fi. I haven't done this yet. For me, I've just found it easier to start separate lists. Maybe I make it too hard. I don't know. Are you guys doing anything like that, or have you heard of it?
Well, I've got both fantasy and mystery, and what I typically will do is I'll just make sure I've got something to say for each genre when I send out something. So like, hey, top of the list there, or top of the newsletter for you fantasy lovers, and here's the news, and then for you mystery fans, here's the news about the mystery series I've got going on. So trying to accommodate everybody there.
I've had a couple of experiments with segregation. There's a few times I've had a promotion that was only good for a certain area. Like I think I might have done an Australia only promo one time a while ago, and I segregated the email announcing it to just people from Australia because no one else would have any use for it. And there's a couple other situations where I have tried to send out an email. Like I talk about, you send out an email and then you send out a follow-up email to make sure people saw the first email. If you have a huge number of signups in between the first and second email, sometimes I will do sort of a second version of the email to people who signed up in between, Otherwise, they sort of are coming in the middle of a story, kind of like they don't understand what you're referencing in the follow-up email. So I've done that. But generally speaking, those are the only situations that I've really sliced mine up. I've write in a lot of genres at this point, and I could certainly see I would probably have a higher open rate and click-through rate if I was only sending the relevant news to the people who came to me through that book series. But I haven't done so yet because I still hold out hope that I'm going to get a crossover between my series as a result.
Yeah, if you did have people self-select, do you want sci-fi, do you want fantasy, or maybe you want both, that'd be an efficient way to do it. Like I've got 2 separate lists, so I end up with people that have to be on 2 separate lists, and you could just have one list and hit just the sci-fi people, just the fantasy people, or the people who want both could get it all. All right, getting to the end of our little questions here. So what do you guys do with your list on launch week? Like, what is the strategy? How do you do anything special, or is it just all at once mail everybody?
When it comes to a new launch, I'll typically probably about a month before my launch goes live, I'll say like, hey, FYI, you guys, I've got a new title coming up. It's coming up in, let's just say, 4 weeks time or whatnot. And then usually like the day before it goes live, I'll say, okay, tomorrow or tonight at 12:01, whatever you want to look at it, this thing is going live. So and then I'll provide the links for all the popular retailers depending on where it's at. Put it on the bottom so that way make it nice and easy for them to find it.
Yeah, for me, I mean, in terms of the full run-up, I will have an email at some point when I go for pre-order on Wide, and then I'll have a follow-up email sometime later when I go for pre-order on Amazon. But on the actual launch week, on launch day, I typically, there's a thing that if you have a paid version of MailChimp, it's called Time Warp. Time Warp, basically, you can say at 11 a.m. in every time zone, send out the email to the people in that time zone. Because if you fiddle around with your mailing list for any amount of time, you're going to find you have a higher open rate at certain times of day on certain days of the week. So if you can hit that certain time of day in every time zone, you're going to be able to sort of replicate that. So that is the thing I'll do with, at this point, every email, but certainly launch emails. And then I will usually, again, I'll say no more than twice a month. During a launch is when I will have the second email in a week. So it's a week later, that is. And I'll pull the whole stunt over again where I'll roll through the time zones with Time Warp.
Yeah, I saw something not too long ago online that kind of picked apart which days people were most likely to open emails from authors. I don't know if it's authors specifically, but and you kind of know your genre best. In case of my Ruby sci-fi romance stuff, I can just tell from the Kindle page reads and the book sales, but the page reads is a real easy way to just go and look at it. Way more stuff is getting borrowed and read on the weekends. It's like I usually know in that genre, like Friday night to Monday morning, sales and page reads are going to be much stronger than they were in the week. So I usually send out emails like on a Thursday or Friday in anticipation that people may want to buy the books for the weekend. And as far as the mailing list, since I've got a couple of them, I am able to stagger things that way. Like I said, the Ruby launch did well this summer. What I did basically was I put up the first book. I think I got it on pre-order. I tried. Maybe it was the second one, but I tried to put the first one on pre-order on Amazon about 4 days before the release date. I think that's the last day you can do it. Otherwise, you just have to wait to the release date. And I like to do that just because it gets the also bots populated. So on release day, you're not this, because otherwise you kind of have no categories for a while and no also bots. It takes a couple days for things to kick in. So I've started doing that. But I don't email people about the pre-order. It's only 4 days away anyway. But I'll just get some sales starting to stagger in from random people who find them. And usually on the launch day, I will often just do social media. So I think I did just like, hey, tweet, and maybe a Facebook boosted post on the launch day. And then like on I think I launched on Thursday with this series. So that first day, that was social media. And Friday it was time to mail the list. So, and I had all of 700 people on it, guys. Ruby had been slacking off, so there was nothing major going on there. I mailed those guys on like Friday, and then I did a little more. I had I can't remember who I think I lined up about 3 ads to go out that day, and honestly, I don't remember where they were. Nobody big. There's a few people that will take stuff that's a new release, and So I did that for the weekend, did some more boosted posts. I probably spent about $250 on the launch that first week. I started doing more with it, paying more through BookBub pay-per-click ads after the first weekend, in part because I wanted to experiment with them and see if they worked better than Facebook, because I kind of figured, well, this is a book buying audience, so it might be really good. And since the book was doing well, I spent more money on it. If the book, if you can kind of tell with the launch week, if it doesn't hit, if it's not getting kind of sticky, it's probably not worth throwing more money at it. Just, all right, maybe the next series will resonate with people better. But so, and then a couple of days later, I emailed I had announcement anyway from, actually it's probably about a week later, my Fallen Empire list, the short story that was getting me blacklisted. I had to email about that anyway, because it was an anthology that came out. So I said, oh, and by the way, my pen name has these 2 books available now. You can go check it out if you want. And then like a week later, I had news from my other list, so I mailed again. And I think it really did a nice job of keeping the sales coming in over about 2 weeks, and that was helpful in causing it to be sticky in that category for, like I said, the first 30 days were really nice. I mean, I got up as high, I don't know, I think 150 or 160 in the store briefly, and that's not typical for me. And this was reviving a pen name that hadn't published anything in the genre in a year and a half. So it doesn't always happen. Doesn't always happen to me. But I think if you can stagger things, that's a good way to do it with your mailing list these days, to try to give yourself the best chance you can. Because as we've talked about before with the BookBub phenomenon, Amazon kind of shoves you back down if you get a big 24-hour spike. They want to see, or their algorithms to start promoting you to others, they seem to want to see that more steady sales. And I like the idea of starting slow and building, and your best people do it on like day 4 or something. And in my case, since I have the multiple lists, that's how I did it. And since my Ruby list was so small anyway, there's no point in bothering to segregate anything. But I've heard from people that it works really well to maybe do, if you have one list, say of 5,000 people, send it out over maybe 3 days and pick your least responsive people for day 1, then the next day your medium responsive people, and then the last day the people who open everything and buy everything. And something like that can be a great way to, like I said, just give yourself as much of a chance as possible to stick on Amazon. And the sad news is that if you're not hitting enough of the tropes and not really nailing it with the cover, it's going to be hard to stick no matter what you do, but give yourself a chance.
Lindsay, we got a question from you from a viewer, from Benjamin. He says, a question for Lindsay, if time. Okay, are box sets a tactic you plan to use for your sci-fi series? Are you waiting for them all to come out of KU before you do that, or are you abandoning box sets altogether?
I'm going to assume he means my Fallen Empire series, and I do have a 3-book box set out there with the prequel in it. It's $9.99. I haven't taken it off that price point yet. I'm not going to unless I can get a BookBub. And I still love the box sets. I wait. In this case, I waited till the series was, I think it was all out. All 8 books were out. Because it's kind of an opportunity for a second launch. If you've already promoted book 1 a bunch of times, you've done your Kindle countdown deals, or if you're wide, you've done some 99 cents, or maybe you've done perma-free on book 1. Suddenly having this box set can definitely be something else you can run through all the promo sites. We've talked before how BookBub seems to like the box sets because it's going from like $9.99 to 99 cents. And even though that's 3 books, if you have an 8-book series, it's still, you have 5 more full price books for them to go on and buy. So I've definitely found it profitable and worthwhile to do those, drop 3 books all the way to 99 cents. If it's for a BookBub, I will almost never do it if it's not. In fact, I don't think I've done it for any other reason than a BookBub. But I have let it ride afterwards. Some people bump it right back up to $10 right away. If I see, like, this was kind of my first really awesome year was when I had a BookBub on my Dragon Blood box set. It was 3 books. It was 99 cents. And that, despite all the things we were saying, BookBub knocks them down, or Amazon knocks down the spiked books like that and doesn't stick. I think if it appeals to a wide enough people, you might have a shot of a BookBub sticking. This was 2 years ago. Maybe it won't anymore. But that one stuck at like 200 in the store for months and months. It was 3-book omnibus, of course. Why wouldn't it? It's a good deal. But if it's sticking, I will leave it at 99 cents for however long. And once it fell down to like below 1,000, that's when I think I made it $4.99 after that. And I've had a couple more BookBubs on it, and I've even done a free one now that's kind of an old series at this point, and the BookBub people have seen it a zillion times. So, and that helped me have a pretty good summer with my LB stuff, even though I wasn't releasing anything new. So yes, love box sets. All right, last question. No, two questions left. Do you guys do any autoresponders? And I think Joe already kind of talked about this. This is basically just when people sign up, they get an automatically, like what's in your email that they get. And then do you have any other emails that come, because you can have a whole series. You can give them something every day for a month if you want. Do you guys do anything like that?
The closest thing I do is when I originally started with my email newsletter there, I had the option to send out like, hey, thanks for agreeing to sign up for my newsletter. You must confirm first before. And I realized that was a mistake, because a lot of people say, okay, well, I signed up the one time, I've just, whether they got spammed, flagged, whatever, and they deleted it, they would never just confirm it. So I switched that to just the normal, hey, welcome to my newsletter, that sort of thing. As promised, here's a link where you can find my free incentive for signing up. That's the free short story. So that's what's in mind. I haven't set anything else up, because I've thought about it, but I haven't come across anyone that's had a lot of good luck with it. So nothing yet.
Yeah, likewise. When you first sign up for my newsletter, there's a thing MailChimp calls it the final greeting, I think it is. It's basically once everything is through and you're officially on the list, you'll start receiving emails. I have it automatically say, hey, thanks, as a way of saying thank you, here's the current perk, and I'll give them the current perk. I suppose I could set up a string of sort of follow-ups for newcomers, because, again, I have a string of perks that I've gone through. And a common problem I have is because I've had so many of them, people will email me asking how can I get the earlier ones. So that's a thing I might consider doing, but as it is right now, I just have the after the final sign up, they'll get a, hey, thanks for signing up, here's your short story.
All right, and I've heard of authors doing a series, and I think it's not a bad idea, especially if you get people like through Insta Freebie. You might want to do something like, okay, you read my free one, here's 4 days after they signed up, say, or a week, however long you think it's going to take them to read your free book. Here's book one, it's 99 cents on Amazon, you may want to check it out. And maybe here's 2 other things I have for free. And then maybe a week later you email them and, oh, I have this other series that's almost the same, and book one is always perma-free, so why don't you check it out? So that's something to consider. I do not do any of these things yet. I absolutely have one response, and in the last year I went in and changed it. I think it was originally just like, hey, thanks for signing up, you're awesome, please read my books. It was something with like no links in it. And actually I think my LB one may still be that way. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I did go in when I was setting up the Ruby list, changing things around this summer. I went into that one and also to the Fallen Empire one, and I said, here's your freebies, because the Fallen Empire one, like Joe, I've got like 4 or 5 freebies in there by now. I'm like, here's the prequel novellas, here's the bonus scenes, and I just keep a list of everything for them. And then I also went in and said, here's the reading order for the whole series, and here's the links to all the books. Oh, and here's the new series that takes place 10 years later, and here's the links to all the books. So I think it's definitely a good idea to mention, depending on how many books you have. Like, I probably wouldn't put all 50 or whatever books I've written for my fantasy one in there, but maybe put all your series starters and throw the links in there. So you never know what brought somebody to your list, especially when you have multiple series going. So why not mention all the new books? And I did the same thing with the Ruby list. Here's the Mandrake Company stuff that was from 3 years ago. And they're selling more now with the other series, even though they're unrelated. So that's something I would definitely do. And you can do that in every email. I haven't done that yet, I don't think, but I will definitely mention the series I'm working on. But I've seen authors, especially when they're having like a VA do it, and it's just like, it's something easy for them to do. Like, here is the new release by so-and-so, and here are all the other books in their series in case you've missed any. And again, if you use click tracking or the affiliate links or a way to monitor those, you will probably get a lot of people every time you email your list that go back and buy book 5 in the series you wrote 3 years ago, because they realize, I never read that one, or I forgot to finish that series or something. So I would definitely, kind of the same as the back matter you're putting at the end of your ebooks maybe, which I'm not great about doing that either. or updating it. But this is pretty easy. So just on your first one autoresponder, make sure you've got a list of your books at the very least. Do you guys have any final thoughts on that?
I do something similar. I've got, I don't have nearly as many books as you, but I found if I put a link to pretty much all the books at the bottom of the email, it looks kind of tacky. Like, look at everything I did. So y'all usually put like the last 3 that I released, or else if I'm trying to push like a series that's not doing so well, I'll put like the link to book 1 in there. I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't traditionally do too much in terms of linking stuff that is not the focus of the email. What I'll do instead at the end of my email is I'll have a link to my social media and whatnot, so that people who want to have a more of an up-to-date information on me will be able to find it in that way.
All right, well, I'm going to give you a challenge to maybe consider putting a link to at least your book 1s.
Yeah.
At the end, and because I really noticed, I saw how often this stuff get clicked, and how many more sales I'm getting credit for on affiliate links of just stuff that's not the thing. And I don't know about you guys, but I get emailed often like, what is the reading order? And there it is. So people
I get
amazingly
reading order questions all the time.
Yeah, I feel like it's not usually hard to figure that out on Amazon, but I'm not my audience necessarily, and not everybody's going to be as obsessively spending as much time on Amazon as we are. So it's, and I just stick it like after the sign off, like, thanks, my name, and then, oh yeah, here's everything. So it's not, doesn't look spammy, I don't think, but something to try if you haven't tried it yet.
Absolutely.
And we've been talking for plenty of time, so we'll do Insta Freebie another time after I've had more than 2 days in it, and can give you guys a little more of my thoughts on it. Hope we answered some questions and helped out a little bit. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We appreciate it.
All right, you guys take it easy.
So long, everybody.